We're looking at solving this quadratic via completing the square. So first off, I know it's a quadratic, right? Because I got my x squared and I got my x term. So completing the square is a very specific method we use to solve a quadratic. And when we're solving, right, we know that we're looking for, that's my little version of a little parabola. We are looking specifically for the x-intercept. So we're looking for up to 2 values of x. So in order to solve with this method, with completing the square, the first thing we want to do is we want to isolate our x pieces, our x squared and our x terms. Normally we want the equation set equal to 0, but this is one where we actually want to get that constant on the other side. Now, technically speaking, you don't have to do this step, but in my mind, it makes it easier if we move that constant over. So some of you may have learned it where you don't have to, but I think this is easier. Okay, so I've got that 10 moved over, and then this is what I want to focus on. I'm building a square with these pieces. Now, we have a very specific rule to find that number, which we call c, right, because it will be the constant when I build this as a quadratic. It's the b value, divide it in half, and then you multiply it by itself. So what I can do is I can just take my b value, which unfortunately is odd. So that's going to mean I'm going to get some decimal values, but that's okay. We're going to do -7. We're going to divide it by 2. And then I need to square that number. I need to do negative 3.5 squared. By the way, notice I kept it in parentheses, so it's negative times negative. All right, so that's going to give me a 12.25. So that's what I want to add to both sides. I'm going to put a plus 12.25, and I do need to make sure that I add it here as well. Now, if you just like the algorithms, you're probably totally fine with just do this, find that number, multiply it out. But for a lot of people, it makes sense to sort of really see what we're doing. With that x squared term, which would be like a square block, I'm then going to build with my 7x's, the same amount going this way and this way, so negative 3.5x and negative 3.5x, in hopes to build a complete square. But my square is not complete. I didn't draw that very well. It's because my square is not complete until I get this area totally filled in. All right, and based on my area model work, this is x by x, and then this is negative 3.5, negative 3.5. And then when I multiply those two numbers out, which is what I did in the calculator, I get 12.25. So that's why this number was added to both sides. And the other nice thing about that, I'll bring my equal sign down here, is I'm trying to create a binomial squared, and it's really easy to see it from the area model. Look, it's x minus 3.5. It's this length times this length. So what goes in the parentheses is x minus 3.5. It's always x and then whatever half of this value is. Okay, so this, oops, I left off a number. I wonder if you guys were shouting at the screen there. I didn't catch it. 12.25, 12.25. I left off that digit. That's going to give me 2.25 here when I do negative 10 plus 12.25. And at this point, it may look like it's not working out to nice numbers, but this actually ends up being pretty darn nice. In order to get the x by itself, we want to take the square root. So I'll do the square root over here, and that will cancel. It's what I want. I'm going to do the square root on this side, but it's a very specific square root because I introduced it. It is going to be the plus or minus square root. Over here, this is giving me x minus 3.5. And then this doesn't look like it's going to work out nicely, but it actually does. The square root of 2.25 is 1.5. So this is plus or minus 1.5. And then from here, I just need to add my 3.5 to both sides, right? I'm just going to do plus 3.5 plus 3.5. And it looks a little odd to start. These cancel, right? So I have x equals, but this is 3.5 plus or minus 1.5. And this is actually going to work out to integers. It did not look like it at the beginning, but it will. We're going to get positive or negative whole numbers here. 3.5 plus 1.5. It's going to give me 5. So my first answer is that x equals 5. And then my second one is 3.5 minus 1.5. And that is 2. And those are my two solutions. They are my x-intercepts. If I was to graph this parabola at the beginning, if I made this y equals x squared minus 7x plus 10, my x-intercepts would be 5 and 2. All right, I hope that's helpful. Message me anytime with questions.